Hi everybody, this is Brendan here at Common Motor. That's common-motor.com on the internet. And today we're going to show you how to do a clutch adjustment for the Honda CB350 and CB360 families of bikes. We're going to actually do the adjustment on the bike and actually show you on the bench the mechanism and how it works. So what I have right here in front of me is the actual lifter mechanism off the side of the bike, and this one's really clean because I cleaned it for the shot here. I'm going to show you all the guts and pieces of it, but typically it's going to look something like this. It's going to be pretty filthy. In fact, it's probably the dirtiest area in the bike, so I suggest if you take the cover off, not only clean this and all the guts and pieces of it, but clean the other side of the engine as well, because it is going to be the dirtiest area of the bike. So this is pretty normal. In fact, that's not so bad. Sometimes it's like caked, like packed full of stuff. So don't be surprised what you find in there. So here's the actual lifter mechanism right here. And when we're adjusting the clutch, what we're actually adjusting is this lifter and the position of this lifter in relation to the clutch push rod. The clutch push rod actually comes out of this little hole right here. I have a push rod here. It looks something like this. And then as you move the clutch cable, it causes the push rod to move in and out to separate the clutch discs. But here's the mechanism. I've got a cable on it right now. I don't know if you can see this or not. We'll see if we can get it zoomed in. But what's happening is as I pull the cable, this little lifter is going to kind of push out. Not very far. It's going to push out maybe about 3/16 of an inch as I pull it. But that's enough to cause the clutch to separate. It doesn't lift up very much. And what we're actually adjusting is how far out the starting position of this lifter is with the adjustment on this side. Oh, there goes our ball bearing. Get to that in a second. So let me take this apart so you guys can kind of see all the pieces here. So I have a clutch cable just kind of sitting in here right now. I'm going to go ahead and remove this clutch cable. Alright, cable's out. I want to take apart this actual lifter piece right here. And in the center of this hole there's a ball bearing. If you can't get your clutch to adjust, there's a good chance that you're missing the ball bearing out of this lifter hole right here. Again, this is where the push rod would set to move the clutch. It's a 5/16 ball bearing in case you're missing it, so you can pick it up at the auto parts store or the hardware store. Anyway, let me just take it out of there real quick. That's the lifter. Take it out. And on the back side of the lifter, you're going to see these three tiny little kind of indents in it. And that's where the ball bearing rollers that the lifter rides on kind of sit and move. So important piece. This is made of hardened steel, and yeah, it's called the lifter. So we'll put that down. Next is the bearing plate. That's this guy here. Sometimes it's this kind of D-shaped plate with the three bearings on it. Sometimes it's a triangle that comes either way. For some reason, people seem to be missing this plate a lot, so make sure you have it. If you don't have it, you can sub with the ball, just loose ball bearings, but the guy just kind of ends up sitting in there. Alright, take out the nut on the back, and then here, I'm going to remove the adjuster. Let me show that to you right there. That is the actual adjuster, or lifter adjuster piece, and this is what actually gets moved during the adjustment process. Let me get back to that in a minute. We'll put it down. Let's talk about the housing cover here. It has the small return spring on it. Hopefully you have yours. And then right here we have a dust seal. This seal does come off. It's not like a super tight seal, but we do have it as a replacement. If you end up buying one of the oil seal kits for the 350 or 360, it does have this seal or dust shield in the kit, but it does pop off. But if it's in good shape, you can use it again. But it is available as a replacement part. All right, I'm going to move all that stuff aside. This is the actual lifter plate. you see it has these three kind of like little ramps. And what those ramps are for is for the ball bearings to ride on. So what happens when you move the clutch lifter, these little balls ride up the ramps, and a lot of people have talked about how I get this phenomenon called a clutch pop, where they squeeze the clutch, it's really tight, and then it goes pop, and then it's loose. What's happening is, as you're squeezing the clutch, the resting position of this little ball bearing plate is already kind of preloaded and up on the ramps a bit, and you go to squeeze it and it moves past the ramps and pops out of place. So that's what the clutch pop is it's a preloading. You just show all three pieces kind of put together here. A sandwich. There's a very finite window of adjustment where this runs nice and smooth, and we'll do it on the bike, but that's the mechanism. As you move the adjuster, what we're doing is we're changing the overall position of the mechanism in the housing. So we'll be turning this guy counterclockwise, and it's going to cause this to move closer to the engine. And then as you move the actual clutch cable, it's what causes that action to happen right there. So just get an idea of how this mechanism works and what you're getting into. Now this is all nice and clean right now. It really should be packed full of wheel bearing grease. So we have our wheel bearing grease right here. So let's put this whole thing back together. Now I suggest if you have not taken this system apart on your bike and it's new to you, do it. Take it apart, clean it, lubricate it with fresh grease. You have to remember, every time you squeeze the clutch, which is every time you shift gears, this mechanism is in action. So it sees a lot of use, more times than you can count, because it just, you're squeezing that clutch and you're not thinking about it. Another real quick point, you might have noticed this little nipple here on the outside of the housing. Sometimes it falls out and there's just a hole there, but what this is supposed to be is a grease fitting where you put a grease gun on it and pump this the lifter assembly full of grease. I don't find that they work all that well, but you can give it a try. I will just take it apart, clean it, and pack it by hand manually, like doing wheel bearing. So, all right, first order of business is I'm going to put the lifter plate on the screw here. Remember the slotted side faces outward. I'm going to thread that in, not all the way where it touches, just a hair back. Now on this lifter plate there is a notch. See it right there? And there is a notch inside the housing where that needs to line up when you drop this in. Everything has an alignment piece on it, so I'm just going to flip it over and put the nut on the back here so it doesn't fall out. Not tight, just to keep it from dropping out. Okay, so now I'm going to pack the assembly here. I got that lifter basin with the bearing grease. Good old wheel bearing grease. This is strawberry flavored wheel bearing grease. No, don't eat this. Just pack the grease in there. Yeah, and then again, the whole clutch lifter rebuild here. Alright. Next is my, my little bearing plate here. And the flat side is going to go towards the notch. And the notch on this one was right over here. So I'm just going to drop this right on center here and push it down, and it'll find the ramp. I push it down and seat it on the ramps. Right there. And now it's time for more bearing grease. Being quite generous with it because, again, this thing sees a lot of action. All right, bearing grease is in. Here's my lifter assembly. Do note there's a small hole on the bottom here. that holds for the retaining spring. And it's going to be a lot easier to get it on the spring before you drop it on the hole. So I'm just going to work it onto the spring like that. And then drop it all in for now. Put some of this grease right in that center hole, because the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that ball bearing I took out here earlier, put it right there in that center hole, and put more grease on it. Hold it in place, because that's going to get some use to it. That's going to be it right there. And then you come back in with your clutch cable, and it's going to do its thing. Makes you see it. Put pressure on it. You'll see it lifting out. Alright, so our first step in getting the clutch adjusted is to actually slacken and loosen up the clutch cable as loose as it will go. And there's two adjustment points. We're going to loosen it up down here at the crankcase, and then also up at the handlebar. Okay, so to loosen it down here, we're going to need a 14mm wrench and a 10mm wrench. And basically I'm going to be threading this housing in as far as it will go into the clutch adjuster. It might be loose enough to be by hand. That's where I want to be. In as far as it'll go. Like that. We're loose up top. The actual clutch adjustment's done right here with the lock nut and the flathead screwdriver slot. It's 12mm. Screwdriver in. I'm going to hold the screwdriver in place. Just break the nut loose a bit. Okay. The actual adjustment is going to be backwards of what you think. If you turn the screw counterclockwise, it's going to cause the adjuster to push in and get closer to the push rod on the engine. The opposite if you turn it clockwise. So it's a little backwards, so I'm just going to turn it until I just feel it touch. Right there. Not turning it really quickly, hard. I got to make sure I got that nut backed off enough, because if the nut isn't backed off enough, the nut can touch the cover and give you false feeling. Just touching right there, and I'm going to back it off just a little bit, maybe right about there. The manual says a quarter turn. That would be a quarter turn. I like to just go a little bit back from that, maybe more like an eighth of a turn. Then hold the center bolt. I'm doing a valve adjustment and tighten down the nut. I like to leave this adjuster loose as far as it'll go and make my final adjustment up top. If I can't get all the slack out up top, or I'm running out of adjustment up top, then I'll bring this out a little bit and take out some slack here and go up top. But most of the adjustment can be done up top. So let's go up top and do that final adjustment. So here's our upper cable adjuster right here. And it's important to know that all the adjuster does is take the slack out of the cable, and we don't want to take out a ton of slack. There's a certain threshold of how much we want. So right now we're a bit loose on the handle there, and as I squeeze it, we're getting a little disengagement, but it doesn't start engaging until about right there. Back this out just a little bit and give it a squeeze. Well, that feels pretty good right there. Maybe a little bit more. So the goal is the first quarter to third of the lever's motion back is going to feel kind of sloppy. A lot of people want this to be like super stiff and tight. That's wrong. This lever should have this kind of a little bit of play in it right here, and then once the play is gone, you feel it pull and disengage the clutch. So if the clutch is snapping back super tight, you have the cable too tight. And when the cable's too tight, you're preloading the lifter, and then you're going to get the clutch pop. So right there should be good. About a quarter to a third of the lever's motion needs to be that kind of play. I'm going to call it quits there, and just take my little adjuster just like that. That feels good. So that's right. It's going to be a little bit on the sloppy side. Alright, so that's how the clutch adjustment's done for the bikes. Thanks again for watching. Remember to subscribe to us right here on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And of course, sign up for our newsletter for more helpful tips and other things that are going on here at the shop. Again, this is Brendan with Common Motor. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.